Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to be taking a look at Call of Cthulhu, the 7th edition, which is put out by Chaosium Games, written by Sandy Petersen. And both Chaosium and Sandy Petersen have been producing Call of Cthulhu since the very beginning, probably in the early 1980s. I believe that I first played this game when it was in the second edition, and I want to say that was probably around 1980, 81 or 82. At the latest 83, but I think it was earlier than that. This is my first time looking at these books, so I will do some detail in them, and it's been a long time since I've actually played Call of Cthulhu. So I like I said, I go all the way back to the early, to mid 1980s when I was playing this, and I picked these up as part of my holiday shopping spree. I had gotten some gift cards, and I was like, one thing I certainly want to put back into my RPG collection was something that was Call of Cthulhu. So I picked up the Keeper's Rulebook and the Investigator's Rulebook. I did not get the screen yet, although eventually I probably will, and I'll see whether or not I need they have kind of like a monsters compendium for it. Although I know the Keeper's Rulebook has those included as well, and so I'll probably just use what is in this book, and then any other source materials I might have elsewhere. I know I have the Cthulhu. It was written for Pathfinder. It was also Sandy Petersen, and he produced a Cthulhu Mythos companion for the Pathfinder. He also made one for 5th edition as well. So, but without further ado, I'm going to jump right into taking a look at these books. But before that, this past week or so, which I haven't been able to get around to doing a video. I've been so busy with work, but this past week or so, there's been quite a bit of a brouhaha over Evil Hat Productions released released their Kickstarter, and it's based on the Cthulhu mythos, and that gaming developer decided that, or they felt that it was important for them to put out a disclaimer on H.P. Lovecraft and addressing H.P. Lovecraft's racism that he had expressed when he was alive and certainly younger. Over time, he had started to move away from that and develop away from that. But if you're not aware, H.P. Lovecraft was born in 1890 and he died in 1937. So he was 47 years old. He was, when people say, well, he was racist even for his time, and that was partly true. Even his contemporaries said, we're kind of like, dude, that's pretty racist. But over time, he started to become less so, let's say. So as he was getting older and becoming more experienced with other individuals outside of his little bubble that he was growing up in, his attitudes changed to the point that he's also described by Evil Hat as being anti-Semitic, and yet his wife is Jewish, so he clearly had gotten through whatever xenophobic attitudes that he was holding towards foreigners. Now, I went into some of his older books and his short stories, and I started re-listening to my audio tape of the Necromonicon, which are the unabridged versions of his and unedited versions of his short stories. read by professional, readers. And the story in question that came up was Cats in the Wall. I'm sorry, not cats, Rats in the Wall. And his cat's name in that story was something that was kind of, and of course this notorious example of his racism. But that's really the only overt racism. And if you hear it read in in an audio version of it, where you get the tone of the cat's name being said, it's very it's not charged at all. It's almost just matter of factly his black cat is named, this name that we would consider to be inappropriate today. And it's the same tone of usage that you might hear in a music video, or a music, song that's using the word, in a very a flippant, casual way. And so, not making excuses that, these things should be okay to use in the actual materials, but when you're writing a disclaimer, to say, well, the author of this story content was a really terrible person, and we just wanted you to know that, but we're selling a product based on that person's work. It comes off as extremely hypocritical. And when I look at the comparison, and I'm going to briefly show that comparison between Sandy Petersen and his 35 plus years of dealing with H.P. Lovecraft content, and you compare it to Evil Hats, just this month releasing something and putting that disclaimer in, you'll see how ridiculous I think, and that's just my opinion. I think it comes off as ridiculous and hypocritical. But I'll show you that very quickly here. So here is Sandy Petersen's statement on the issue, and this came out of an interview on Dicebreaker.com. All right, so I get questioned by journalists like you all the time. Otherwise, no one seems to care. He responded. All right, so this is Sandy Petersen. I don't think it's fair to judge a person from the past with whatever the current fashionable sensibility is. Lovecraft was clearly racist, but he was also complicated. He develops his views over time and becomes more open-minded. Petersen explains that most of Lovecraft's racism is found in his personal letters rather than his stories, and dismisses the infamous name of a certain cat as not uncommon pet name for the era. I don't have to be racist to love Lovecraft stories, and he's not as racist as people claim. Says, I'd rather look at that good things Lovecraft produced. It's not my writing, that's theirs. And so that's his take basically on it, is that it wasn't prevalent in the works. It was something that he had slowly developed away from. And again, remember, he was fairly young when he died. He was only 47 years old when he died. He didn't start writing until his late teens or early 20s or so. And so he had quite a bit of growing up to do, and he was certainly an interesting and in some ways a disturbed, xenophobic kind of a person. And so the xenophobia is more of what I see in his writing than blatant racism like we would see it today. As far as Evil Hat Productions, so on January 17th, the official Evil Hat Productions Twitter account tweeted that development team were obligated to reflect on the problematic roots of the source material. And they posted an image of their content and consent page of their product. They talked about, draw specific attention to Lovecraft's racist views, which were unfortunately common for his time period, though his views eventually softened. That's the writer of this. That's not Cthulhu, Fate of Cthulhu's content consent section, where it talks about his views having softened. And the reasons that the developers and players can acknowledge the fear behind his imagination while also re examining what came out of it. Before recommending similar works of writers of color as reference for the world building as an alternative to Lovecraft's stories. So, I mean, basically, what they're saying is that pastiche stories were offered up rather than Lovecraft's real stories. And, to me, it's basically saying that, what they're doing here is they're saying we're obligated to tell you that this guy was not, not a great person, in our standards, held very negative views, but we're still going to use his intellectual property in order to make a buck off of it. To me, it just comes off as hypocritical, and that's that's basically where I stand on it. I think it's hypocrisy. If you felt that strongly about it, then don't use the Cthulhu mythos. Don't use H.P. Lovecraft's works. Use those other authors without attaching, H.P. Lovecraft's name to it. You can certainly welcome to do that, and that would at least be, the Cthulhu mythos as envisioned by, and then this other author. It's a cheap way to go, since most of H.P. Lovecraft's works now are in public domain, so you can use them for free, which is probably why they don't want to use the other authors as well. They'll tell you to look at it and to use it, but they're not going to use it because they would have to actually pay for it. So, so that's the other, hypocritical thing about it. But anyway, let me get to the product at hand and just give a quick look through this. And once again, this is my first look at the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu. I have been trying to get the box set of 2nd edition, which I believe is the edition that I played back in the early 1980s, but it's been prohibitively expensive. And I've heard nothing but great things about 7th edition. So that's another reason why I picked this one up, want it for my collection. So here we have the Keeper's Rulebook, and I'm going to make sure I don't do what I just did. I'm going to adjust a little bit here. This is my actual second filming of this because my camera, I had unplugged my camera by accident. Yeah, I'm still not quite set up here. There we go. And so there's the man, H.P. Lovecraft. And we have originally written by Sandy Petersen, with later revisions by Lynn Willis, and so on. So Call of Cthulhu, this is the 7th edition. And let's see when this was copyrighted. It's still fairly new, I'd say, so published in October 2015. All right, and this is the 4th printing. They go through H.P. Lovecraft, a little background story of him. Here is the foreword by Sandy Petersen. And we get to the table of contents here. So I will just flip through these real quick. So you have Chapter 1, an introduction, the overview of the game mechanics and such, an example of play, and then what you need in order to play. Then Chapter 2 is Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. Chapter 3 is creating your character. So that's the section on character, creating your investigators. That's what they're called, investigators. For this quick reference guide, we'll take a look at that on 34. Actually, I'm going to do that in the player's book. It's a little bit, let me bring this down a little bit more so you can actually see. Yeah, so that's actually a little bit more detailed than this here. Chapter 4 is the skills. Chapter 5 is the game system, so skill rolls, bonuses, and penalty dice. Chapter 6 is combat. 7 is on chases, so establishing a chase and a chase round. Chapter 8, and this is the hallmark of Call of Cthulhu, and that is player sanity. So sanity points, sanity rolls, insanity, examples of phobias and manias, treatment and recovery from insanity, and getting used to the awfulness. So that means kind of like getting numb to some of the cosmic horrors that you're encountering. And then getting into the Chapter 9 is on magic. Chapter 10 is a section for playing the game for keepers. So keepers are the GMs. So that's what GMs are called. Chapter 11 is the Eldritch lore. So it goes into the mythos, some of the books and tombs, or tomes, I should say, the Necromonicon and other tomes. The grimoire is the deeper magic and grimoire, so just a greater amount of spells, more almost artifact type spells. Then they go into artifacts and alien devices, and then beasts and alien gods, monsters, beasts, and alien gods, scenarios, and then the appendices. So you can see the artwork in the book is really, excellent stuff. The pages are nice and glossy, and they're pretty thick. The quality of the book is actually very good. So here's the introduction, and they're going through the this, I believe, is the kind of the play-by-play. So between the keeper and then the various players, what the game covers. So this new edition, Call of Cthulhu, was originally published in 1981. That's about right. And has been consistently available and supported by Chaosium. Since then, this book is the 7th edition and has been fully revised and sees some significant changes while remaining compatible with previous editions. Advice for using previously published materials is provided in the section Converting to 7th edition on page 390. So that's pretty cool too. So they actually give you a whole section on making those conversions. And actually maybe we'll take a look at that very specifically. So let's go to page 390. And take a look, because that's something, wow, that's a really cool picture too. We're almost there. So 390. So Appendix 2, Converting to 7th edition rules. Converting investigators. If players have existing investigators that they wish to convert for use with 7th edition, follow these instructions. The characteristics, Comparable percentage scale, the intention is to make it easier to compare and make opposing rolls using a mixture of skills and characteristics. So there's obviously a change in characteristics. 1/5 of the characteristic will be between 3 and 18. If it is the skill in which you are likely to spend points, the benefit of using 1/5 of the characteristic did not seem significant enough to justify the added complication. The characteristics feed into skill points to a limited degree. A variety of characteristics are used to calculate skill points depending on your investigator's chosen occupation. We chose to keep the link between dodge and dex since it has always been that way. The strength, dex, con, size, app intelligence, power, and education characteristics, see note following of the previous editions, now provide the 1/5 values. Multiply these by 5 for the full values, and then divide the new value by 2, rounding down for the 1/2 value. And they give you basically the characteristic and then what it's divided by 5. You know, so if someone had an 18, that's a 90. Fairly simple math conversions. And they go through on hit points and how they convert, age, how that's done as of a conversion, on build, on movement rates, on skill pools, and so on. So skills, they have like 5th and 6th edition, so photography becomes arts and crafts photography. Fist and punch becomes fighting brawl, grapple becomes brawl, headbutt becomes brawl, and so on. So it looks like they had very, much more detail here, and they all just got lumped into fighting brawl here. So, a simplification. So rifle becomes firearms, rifle, and shotguns. Shotgun becomes firearms, rifle, and shotguns. I'm sure pistol becomes... Pistol probably remains the way it was. So they just combined rifles and shotguns. They should have really called that long arms, but that's fine. And so they have... So it's quite an extensive amount of conversion. So from 390 to 395, so 5 full pages of conversion. So that's, that's pretty significant. Let's take a look at the investigator's handbook now. So this is, very much thinner book in comparison. I actually can't see it that way. I'll go to this screen here, sorry. So you can see here the Keeper's Guide is that much more thicker than the Player's Guide or the Investigator's Handbook. And so let's see. I'm just looking to see if this covers anything much in a different way. There's still the sample of play here. When I saw this picture of these dice, I was like, oh my gosh, I must get these dice. So yes, you can get these dice online. But, I'm not usually like someone who collects dice just for the sake of collecting them and having these, these specialized dice. But I mean, these are just incredible looking, and in that color and everything. Because I've seen them in greens and others as well. But I really like those dice. I was like, I'm definitely getting that. So here in the player's book, they have the full story of the Dunwich Horror. And so if you're giving this to your players so that they can really get a sense of the setting that they're in, the game that they're playing, to actually read H.P. Lovecraft's original work is probably the best way to get there. And I know that runs counter to, read these pastiches instead, but, you got to go to the original source material. And these, it is a full printing of a Dunwich Horror. And once again, H.P. Lovecraft stories are public domain, so you can find them. You can find them online, and or you can do like I do. I mean, I have them in physical copies. I have them on audio. The audio disc is phenomenal. Something like 21 hours of listening for, $15. So it's a great bargain for the amount of time that you have here. So let's see. Introducing Harvey Walters. I said this is my very first time looking through the book, so I like for you to get have that same kind of experience as I'm having when I'm going through a new product for myself and seeing here the half and the fifth characteristics values. So other attributes, so they go into that whole system. So hit points are a reflection of constitution and size. Movement is movement. Determining your occupation. Let's see if anything else really stands out. Again, just the layout seems to be, so here's a quick reference chart on the half and fifth values. Equipping your investigator. So here you have a little picture here. And there is the Great Cthulhu. I'm getting a little light glare from my overhead light. Quick reference for investigator generation. And you can get these. You can get form fillable character sheets online for free. So you can find various websites that will give those out to you. That's something that I never did back in the day, and that we never played with airplanes of the time, and doing aerial combat and stuff. That's probably awesome to do. So the list of occupations, wow. So you have a huge list of occupations here. Everything from accountants to zookeepers, basically, and a whole bunch of things in between. And that's something about some of these older games is that they treated the player character as not always as somebody who was like superhuman. So when they're going out there and doing these investigations, this is like a regular person. Yeah, they might be brighter than a lot of people, or they might be stronger here, or but there's not that sense that they're supers going out there into the thing. It's not as built up as let's say other genres, like a fantasy. A fantasy character is going to be pretty powerful in comparison to a regular human being, and you didn't have that in Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu. I'm going to switch over to this view here. I'm just about getting ready to wrap up. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this and to going into much more detail. I will do another video of once I become familiar with the rules again. I will do a video of character creation and show you how to create a character for this, and perhaps go through and do a read through of one of those plays, or with any luck, I'm looking to join a 7th edition Call of Cthulhu game session at an upcoming event that I'm attending. And so once I get the details of that, I'm certainly going to announce that on the channel. Probably my next video, I'll have some of that stuff squared away. I believe tomorrow is the first day that we can actually start signing up for events. And so if that's going to happen, then I'm certainly going to do a character creation, and then I'm going to play that character in that gaming convention. And then when I come back and report on the entire gaming convention experience, that will be one of the things that I talk about. So once again, I know this is a little bit long-winded because I included that section, that little, as political as I tend to get, with the games, especially, the games and the authors. I get kind of protective for for the hobby and for the authors that I truly follow and, really enjoy their works. And, this game here has been out for, like I said, since 1981. So we're going on, very close to 40 years. This game has been produced by Chaosium and by Sandy Petersen. So, if you're looking to have a true Call of Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft experience, then, I'm going to recommend 7th edition. And if you can get your hands on some of the older editions, then, hey, that's great. Although they're starting to become, pretty darn pricey. In order to get them, you'll save about half the amount on getting the 7th edition here. And you'll probably find more people looking to play this newer version. And it's not that old. It's 2015, so I doubt that a 6th edition or 8th edition, I should say. I doubt that an 8th edition is going to come out anytime, really soon. So that being said, thanks for joining. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Share this video if you want to, show it off to some other friends so that they can take a look at the game. And once again, I really, really recommend this game system. Looks really cool. Looking forward to get back into some Call of Cthulhu. It's been a long, long time since I played it, but it's certainly not been absent from my mind. And so I look forward to seeing you. You have a great upcoming week. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You all have a great rest of the evening. It's Super Bowl Sunday, so if you're watching the game, enjoy. I'd rather be playing my games than doing that. But, for those of you that are rooting for one team or the other, enjoy your time and be safe getting home tonight. All right. You all have a great evening.